Yep, I'm Marissa.
And I'm Andrew. Thanks for having us. We're
Yeah.
completely new to livestock farming, so it's an honor for us to talk and share the little bits that we've learned over the past couple of years.
And also, just as a forewarning, I might be bugging out. We've got a 2-month-old in the other room that Grandma's watching right now. So. All right.
Where'd the button go?
I'm trying to figure out how to move.
So we are located in Cascade, Iowa. I am originally from north central Wisconsin, and Marissa's family is from Cascade. We met at school, and I've moved down here since. We purchased our farm on November 18th of 2017 at a local auction. It's 8 acres, some pretty rundown buildings, but useful. We renovated the house to the best of our ability, and we've been living there for about 2 winters now.
A year, yeah.
Yeah.
So the farm doesn't have any fencing anymore. There are 2 wells on the property, but there's no watering systems. And there's a stream that runs through, and some pretty poor quality pasture that was basically hay ground for the however many years before we bought it. So not too much there. So we, like we mentioned, we're new to the livestock small scale side of things. So this is our first full year on the farm. I grew up on a farm right down the road. So my background is in row crop production, corn, soybeans. Down on our little farm, it's a little different story. We've only got 3 acres of pasture to work with. And so that's why we decided to get into some of the smaller scale livestock, and direct marketing is our end goal.
I don't have any background in agriculture, actually. I worked on a sheep farm in middle school and high school, but that was about it until marrying into a farming family, which sometimes is beneficial, sometimes is not. But I enjoy it, and I wouldn't trade it. So yeah, that's a little about me.
So those are the cows on the left. Those were our little Dexters that we had bought in September of 2018. Then we just sold those this past late summer. And then the pig there is our red wattle. One of our, well, that was a gilt at that point, but that's what we started out with. So here's some of just the pros and cons of cows that we've just briefly run into, because we only had cows for not even a year. But some of the pros are the grass-fed beef market is a pretty big thing now. Not so much in our area. Just we've got a lot of livestock agriculture in our area, and so the grass-fed beef isn't really a big thing, and we're not really near any huge cities that would bring in that demand. Cows do a good job of building soil health, especially if you manage them well on your pastures. They're also fairly low maintenance. Throw up a decent fence and give them some water, and that's really all they need.
Yep, just let a cow be a cow.
Yeah, if you've got good pasture, hay, and whatnot. They're pretty easy to handle, depending on your breed, obviously, and the animal itself, but they're not anything too difficult to work with. They don't need much for infrastructure. Some shelter in the winter. It doesn't need to be anything crazy, and fences and waters. And then something that was important to us that we really didn't think too much about before we got the Dexters is that we needed something that we could sell at a local market if we needed to. Meaning, we can't really very well sell these Dexters at the sale barn because people don't pay for little cows. They're going for the bigger size. So that was something that, if we got back into cows, we might have to get a bigger breed just so that, if we need that out of being able to sell them with the conventional, feedlot cows, we still get decent money for them.
Yeah, these smaller breeds are a specialty niche. So it's important to have and know a market for them. And if you're not able to find that, it's good to have kind of a fallback plan, I suppose.
And we kind of ran into that with the hogs. We ended up with some piglets that got a little big on us, and we didn't get sold, and we needed to move them on because we didn't have space for them on the farm. So called around to the local sale barn to see selling these hogs, and they were only paying, I think it was $25 a head for like an 85-pound pig, and it just was not going to be enough for what we had stuck in them.
Yeah, so that's just an example. We were able to sell these Dexters privately for the price that we were looking for. So that's really the only way that we were able to do that. Some cons to cows was that our temporary fencing didn't work. Like Marissa said, we don't have any permanent fencing at all on the farm. So really all we did was we put up a single polywire electric fence, and it does work until your cow pushes a bale over top of it and gets out that way, or
flood.
Flood happens because we had it down to the stream so they could have access to the water. It would flood, wash away the fence. Also, a cow can only have one calf per year, and the cows we did have were bred. We only had two, and one of them had its calf in the stream, and we weren't able to catch it in time. So it was probably a day later, and we found a dead calf in the stream. So our mortality rate was 50%, which is not very great when you're trying to start out, growing a herd, especially when you have so few.
Cows are pretty expensive up front. They might be $1,000 on one cow. So then they kind of slow herd and business growth on top of that. If they only have one calf per year, and you don't want to buy too many cows up front. And that was a big factor for us because we are,
we just
pretty
bought a
young
farm.
into farming. Yeah, we don't have a lot of money.
Yep.
Cows also require more land than we have to offer with only like 3 to 4 acres of pasture. And we would expand up to my parents because there's some pasture up there, but that would take
and grazing cover crops too.
Yes. But yeah, that's just a con. If you don't have much land, cows are not really a good fit. Why did it go back?
There we go. Some pros to hogs. There's a pretty good pasture-raised pork market around here. There are a lot of confinement buildings, but everyone that we know, they've mentioned they have a problem with the taste of confinement pork. So providing a alternative, a heritage breed, pasture grazed, eating something other than, what confinement hogs do, was important to people. And I know that we like the taste of them better, and everyone that we've sold them to really enjoy the taste. They're a cheaper investment per head. We bought the gilts. They were what, $75? $75, yeah.
Yeah, but they were like 120 pounds.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, you could pay up to probably $500 for a really good sow, or maybe one that is a purebred, and that's still half the price of a cow. Yeah.
There's less space required. You can put more head per acre.
They're just a smaller animal.
Yep. They also have more litters per year and more piglets per litter than a cow would. Our first time farrowing, I think we averaged
close to 10
to 11 piglets in each litter, which was pretty good. They did a really good job this first time sows. So it's also easier to sell and store a whole or a half pig. A lot of people don't have the freezer space for a whole or a half a cow.
Or even a quarter cow.
Or even a quarter cow. So that's a big selling point for us, is that it's a smaller investment for the people that we're we're selling it to as well, and a smaller investment in space in their freezer in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Some cons would be pigs require better fencing. They root a lot. They are hard on everything, including the soil. There's more feed requirements for pigs.
They're not ruminant animals. They're
Yeah.
omnivores, so I mean, I guess you could put them just on pasture, but they're not going to grow very well. And Phil will probably talk about that in his presentation.
Yeah, and that's something that we don't have a lot of experience in yet. So that's something that we will be learning more about as well.
Yeah, but we have been feeding ours just some conventional feed in addition to when they're on pasture. And then, we've got some corn from my parents' farm and from the land that I run. And we've also been giving them produce from local grocery stores, stuff that goes bad. So we're happy to be able to use that, and the pigs love it.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice.
But all of that does add up in time and labor feeding them. A lot of that food comes in packages, so we have to unpackage it. So there's a lot of time and labor involved in feeding them. Also, like Marissa mentioned earlier, they can degrade the soil. They out on pasture, they'll root up an area in minutes. So it's important to wring their noses.
Or, move them more quickly if you don't want to wring their noses.
Right.
And we plan to do a mixture both with that because they can do quite a bit of damage in really a short amount of time.
Yep.
So I think we talked about this with the fences. They really only work if they're hot and on and while working. And the permanent exterior fences are really they're a big deal.
Yep, just in case the electric fence goes wrong.
Yep. Cows with horns, we didn't really care for it too much, having the horns, just because they can be hard on each other. If we would give them a bale of hay, and they kind of pick on each other that way. And then, like Andrew said, they tossed a bale over top of our fence at one point.
Yep.
Again, the smaller breeds require that specialty market, so make sure you've got that in place. Manage your grazing with cows. It's pretty important that way, and you want to keep your pastures good and keep your grass growing well. Cows look really nice on the farm. I thought that was always pretty in the landscape, and they're pretty easy keepers. Again, if you're prepared with the fencing and with waters and whatnot. And it just seems that cows you got more eggs in one basket. If your cow doesn't have a calf, if she doesn't get pregnant or she loses a calf at one point, you got to wait, to breed her back and then wait for her to have another calf. So it's just more of your time and money invested.
Yeah, longer gestation than pigs do. Our experience with the pigs, they'll always test their boundaries. We used a lot of electro-net fencing, which worked great until they started rooting the dirt over the fence, and then it would short it out. And then they quickly learned that they could push their way through the fence. So that was a problem, but one that could be mitigated in other ways, like using a pig tractor, using a single strand on the inside, things like that. They're hard on things. I'm always fixing stuff that they break. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. They're hard on the ground. You can see in the picture, we let those pigs out. That was the first time that they had been out in that area, and they had rooted up a decent patch in just a matter of minutes. And we had not wrung their noses yet. So that's something that we're going to be doing in the future. They'll eat just about anything. They're not picky eaters, except for citrus. They don't really like citrus, we've found. There's more labor involved because of their feed requirements, being omnivores. They want to eat more and they need more variety. And the more variety they eat, the better they will taste. So we like to keep that diverse, but that also means that we spend more time finding different foods for them to eat. And again, maybe that's something that we can revise in the future and be a little bit more creative about. But also farrowing on pasture takes more forethought. We did that once during the summer.
But it's really hard to move, you know, a mama sow with all of her babies, and we had them all together and
in one area
mm-hmm.
Next to the farrowing house, so they had access to that. And then they farrowed again that was October.
Mm-hmm.
And it was getting really, really cold then. And we were not really prepared for that because of those cold temperatures. The farrowing house was not well insulated. We had to board everything up. So that was just a hurdle that we had to get through this year.
Mm-hmm.
Getting an LP heater into the farrowing house and getting heat lamps so that they weren't laying on each other.
Mm-hmm. But there is money, you know, if you have the facilities to farrow, we found that there's definitely money in it. And if you've got, you know, the time to invest in it as well, you know, it's a good way to go.
Yeah. There's also money in pasturing and in feeding out pigs.
Because people like the pasture raised aspect too.
Yep, and that is our goal. Our goal is to direct market meat to the consumer. And so that's something that's important to us as well. More so than farrowing right now, because those are two completely different operations, which is why currently we've eliminated farrowing from our operation. There's fewer eggs in one basket. You know, there's less money invested in each pig, and you have more pigs. So we'll go through some of the numbers in a couple slides.
Yeah.
And they're a lot of fun. They're very intelligent, very inquisitive. You know, they'll look at you, look you in the eye, and look you up and down. They're fun to be around, and also sometimes very frustrating to be around because they're so stubborn and intelligent. So they know what you want and they don't want to do it most of the time.
You got to make them think that they want to do it.
Yep.
To get them to do something.
And again, if you have any questions along the way, feel free to type them in and let us know.
Mm-hmm. And I will add with the fencing too, we just didn't really care for the electro net fencing for the reason that they were, you know, rooting over top and kind of shorting it out. But we have seen some other people online just using single strands, either one or two, depending on the size of their pigs, and they've had good luck with that, and the pigs wouldn't test their fences and whatnot. So it's probably just a matter of, you know, using the right type of electric fence and training your pigs well enough that they don't even go near it.
And something else I wanted to add is pigs. The breed that we chose.
Sorry.
Whoops. The technical difficulties.
There we go.
The breed that we chose, the red wattles, were very healthy. They have really good immune systems. We haven't had any problems with disease or sicknesses, you know, worms, things like that. That's something that we've found with pigs that we appreciate, and particularly with this breed. So.
And they did really well farrowing too.
Yep, they're very good mothers, have good maternal instincts. So that's just a plug about the breed that we chose.
Yep. So we got our red wattles last March, so just about a year ago. And we had just bought 15 pigs from this guy, just intending like simply to feed them out and sell them and not do any sort of farrowing. But it ends up that 6 of the 7 gilts we had bought from him, turns out they ended up being pregnant. So we didn't really have a choice but to farrow them, which we did. And, you know, we enjoyed it so much and we made enough money that we thought, well, heck, let's just breed them back again and do it all over again. Well, you know, just the timing, it worked out that they were farrowing in late November and December. And they actually happened to have their piglets the coldest week of the year so far. It's like below 0. And like Andrew said, our farrowing house was not set up for that. So that was a bit stressful. And we don't really want to overwinter pigs just for the reason that we don't have good facilities for it. So that's something to think about too with pigs, is you got to keep them warm during the winter.
Yep. And that just has to do with our infrastructure mostly, what we have right now on our farm. And those are things that we can improve upon in the future, which is in the plans.
Yep.
So here's some of the numbers.
Obviously, these are just really oversimplified, and you can, correct us if any of these numbers don't seem quite right.
Yeah.
But basically, we figured, a cow might cost around $1,000, and they're only going to have one calf per year, but it takes 2 years to finish that calf out to, grass-fed, grass-finished steer. If you sell them, let's say they're 800 pounds, it might be small or big depending on what you decide to do. Then $5 per pound for hanging weight. That only gets you about $3,000. And again, that takes 2 years to get there. Now, on the other side of things with the pigs, one sow, she might cost $300 if she's got 8 piglets per litter, which might be a little conservative depending on the breed that you choose. And then she has piglets twice a year. It takes them a year to finish. You've got 250 pounds live weight, $2 per pound hanging weight. That'll get you somewhere around $5,600. And that's after 1-ish years, depending on if you feed out both of those litters of piglets, they'll take maybe a year and a half or so. And then, close to $11,000 after a couple years or so. And that's quite a big difference between the cows and the pigs.
Yeah.
So that was kind of our big selling point, because we really don't have a lot of money, getting started, and we needed something that would help us get off the ground sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And obviously, if you have the cash to invest in cows, you could make more than you could with pigs probably. But for us right now, with our situation, it makes more sense to do pigs, and maybe, work a little harder, because they do seem to take a little more labor. But it just fits with our operation a little better right now. So yeah. So currently, like I said before, we are not, we are not farrowing. We decided to sell the sows before our son was born in December, just to simplify our lives. I don't know if I mentioned, I also work full-time as a forester. So I'm busy 8 hours a day doing that, and then I come home and usually have more to do. So having our son in December was going to be something we wanted and needed to focus on, of course. So we decided not to farrow again. In the future, we're also not going to overwinter.
If we could help it.
If we can help it. I think we're gonna purchase feeders from the same guy next year, or this spring too.
In the spring, and then have them fed out by the fall, so we can get them off the farm, and then not have to worry about overwintering them.
Yeah. Something that I'm going to be working on here is building a mobile pen, pig tractor, to get them out on pasture, because we don't have permanent fences. This seemed like a pretty good option for us, because we were struggling with electric fences, just putting them in an enclosure and moving it around, every day or every other day, depending on their impact on the grasses. It seemed like a pretty good option for us. Eventually we'll be installing perimeter fence around the entire property, just in case something does go wrong, and we don't want to be chasing cows home.
Or pigs.
Yeah. Marissa ended up, when we had our cows, they got out on the hottest day of the summer. She was pregnant, and I was at work, and she had to chase them 2 miles home and across a highway. So that was not a very fun experience.
No.
And a reason why we really would like some
Good
permanent
fencing.
perimeter fencing. Yeah. So food for thought. Also, we're considering rotating poultry in after the hogs, maybe making some chicken tractors as well. Bringing them in right after the pigs to eat bugs. And
yeah, after the pigs rooted up, it'd
Yep.
be good to put chickens out there. There's just some potential.
Yep. And reseeding after the animals go through, reseeding the forages is important.
So this coming year, we're just going to be putting in like an annual like cover crop mix, probably warm season, maybe a mix of some cool seasons too. And then the following year, we'll seed it down to permanent pasture. And we're actually getting some EQIP funding for this. We've been working with our local NRCS office. And we also might be getting some money per acre to have a grazing plan and to be grazing our hogs. And it's kind of funny working with them. We talked about putting in some fencing too and getting funding for that. And it was the first time, and I think they said 15 years, that someone had asked them about doing a grazing plan for hogs. So just throwing that out there, if you're thinking of getting into hogs, definitely look into getting some funding and if you're interested in doing that. My brother has gotten into doing cover crops and 60-inch corn. Pretty neat deal, and I'll be doing some 60-inch corn as well on some of my ground. And there is a lot of biomass produced in that sort of setup. And so after you take the corn off, there's a decent amount of cover crops out there to be grazed. And he's thinking of grazing cows out there, but if we got a pig tractor made, I think it'd be cool to put the pig tractor out there and have the pigs graze that. And there'd be a mix of legumes and brassicas and some grasses. And I'd be really interested to see how that works. So that'll be maybe in the future here.
And no cows yet.
Not
maybe
in the current.
Not in the current plans. Maybe in the future.
When we've got more time, maybe. I don't know.
These at least some perimeter fencing and
I see a question.
So the question is, do you plan to let the hogs loose in the whole pasture at once, or smaller paddocks and moving them to new pasture on frequent basis?
If we were doing a fencing setup and paddocks and whatnot, we would definitely be doing the smaller paddocks and moving them.
Do an intensive grazing system
every day or every other day, because they do so much damage. But with this, let's just click to the next slide. There's a
So here's a theoretical picture of what a pig tractor might look like. I have a million plans in my head, and this could be one of them. So something like that, a simple setup that you can just drag around, hook up to a tractor, a skid loader, a truck, and pull it around the pasture. They'll do their thing in one area for a day or two and then move on. It's very similar. It's the basic concept of intensive grazing.
It's just mobile fencing.
Mobile fencing. So this is a low input way, a low cost way to essentially intensive graze without fencing.
Fencing can get pretty expensive pretty fast, especially when you need such good fencing to keep pigs in. And I actually talked to NRCS about getting EQIP funding for fencing as well, but and for watering systems, but it's just, you have to jump through a whole lot more hoops, and it is a lot more expensive, which is why we're thinking of going this pig tractor route. Hopefully it works.
For the time being.
Okay.
So, in summary, based on our current situation, our finances, the infrastructure, which is a huge word, on our farm, cows just aren't suited quite yet to our our farm yet. And our goal of providing meat to direct marketing to customers.
Yeah, and then the pigs do produce quicker returns, and they have the potential to provide larger return depending on how much labor you want to put into it. You know, my dad used to, he calls pigs the mortgage lifter.
Yeah.
But basically it comes down to you have to do what works on your farm with your finances and with what you're willing to put into it.
And thanks, Naomi. We hope that we do too. It would be great to get some fencing and watering systems installed. I did get one a hog water installed this year. We had to lay new line and just a simple mirror fount water, which has been just really nice. Fantastic. That has cut my workload in half almost.
A lot better than 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah, keeping them watered throughout the winter could have been really tough.
There's another question. Have you given any thoughts to chickens and goats on your farm? Well, we actually did have goats for a little bit.
Yep.
There were only 4 of them.
Yeah, we bought them right after we bought the farm to help clean up all the brush and everything. They did a fantastic job of that.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and goats are something that we just didn't have a lot of experience with, and we learned a lot from having them.
Yeah, just the 4 that we had.
Yeah, and I think we don't have them anymore because, well, one, we did have some health problems with them. Goats are more particular and more sensitive stomachs, especially to parasites and things like that. Again, at the time, we just didn't have good fencing at all. We had the electro net fencing, but again, it was just the time and labor to move that and mow paths through, 6-foot tall parsnip and things like that. It just was, it was more time than we had time for.
Yeah. And like we mentioned before, we would like to maybe get into chickens. I thought even turkeys at some point and try to time it and sell them as Thanksgiving turkeys. But, if we're already rotating the pigs with some sort of tractor, it'd be kind of cool to do that with the chickens too.
Yeah. So. There's another question.
Perennial pasture. I've kind of wondered the same thing. How are they going to do on pasture? But I think if we rotate them quickly enough so they don't, totally root up the pasture, and then we go back through and I thought about maybe seeding some annuals kind of in with the perennial and kind of keep it like a cycling system, and then giving it plenty of rest in between, grazing periods. Then, I was kind of hoping that permanent pasture would really work out in the long run. I don't know about the first year we establish it. That's going to be a little more difficult. We'll have to figure out where to graze the pigs and how to get that pasture established. But it's something we haven't thought too much about yet.
Another question. Mix. Do you seed your pastures? If so, what is your seed mix?
We have not conjured up a mix quite yet, but I'd like to throw in some brassicas and
can I go back in the pictures here?
The more diversity the better.
That front pasture that we have, it was really quite amazing how the clover came in.
Yeah, we didn't seed red clover, but it just came up on its own. I don't know if any of you guys have had that happen, but we mowed it off and
made bales, and this came in right behind it, which was great, fantastic. It was beautiful. I also have bees. The bees loved it, so that was a huge bonus to us. We got really lucky there, I guess.
But yeah, we'll do with the annuals. We'll do a wide variety mix, like I was saying, probably more the warm, summer annuals, the warm season stuff. And we'll see. We'll go from there.
Right. Yeah, and the rest of our farm, I mean, it's a lot of reed canary grass, giant ragweed, poison parsnip, um, lots of different kinds of grasses, other forage mix species in there.
We're definitely looking to improve our pastures.
Yeah, it definitely needs it, and especially this area here where Marissa is sitting. This turned into kind of our sacrifice area. It butts right up against our farrowing house. And that's where the sows spent the majority of their time. So right now it kind of looks like the surface of the moon, unfortunately, but that's something that we're going to be working on in the future is getting that soil healthy again and getting some plant roots back in the soil.
That's kind of another con of pigs too, while we're actually on this page. They will create a wallow,
if you give them a chance, they will wallow.
And we've got some pretty deep pits that we've got to try to fill in because we left them in that sacrifice area for a long time. They had some pretty deep pools.
Yeah, but I think that if we do intensively rotate them, I think that'll be a lot more beneficial, and especially with reindeer noses, I think that'll help a lot.
Yep.
So, but yeah. Any other questions out there? This is our second year going into this.
Yeah.
So again,
we don't have a lot of
experience, but we've tried a lot of different things already in just a season of farming together.
Yeah.
So
if there are any more questions, please go ahead and ask Andrew and Melissa. We're actually having a little bit of technical difficulty with our other speaker, so it's going to be a couple of minutes anyways. And I thank you all for your patience with the transition here.
Here's another one. Where did you get funding for fencing?
Well, for the electronet fencing, I actually picked up a lot of our electronet fencing at auctions.
Yeah.
I don't think I actually bought any new.
I don't think so.
I have 4 rolls. They work really well for the most part, unless the pigs are, flipping dirt over on top of it. It worked well for the goats, of course. Otherwise, for the cows, we used the single polywire and just fiberglass stakes. We just got those
bought those new.
Yeah, we bought those new. They were fairly cheap.
But as far as exterior fencing goes, if you talk to your local NRCS office and let them know, you want to improve your pastures or start pasturing.
Or making new pasture.
Yes. They can get you EQIP funding for that. You do have to apply for that, and it can be kind of a cumbersome process depending on how long it takes them to get funding and whatnot. And you might have to wait a year, however long, for them to get that through and get you approved. But that can be a really helpful thing. They will cost share that. I think it depends too on if it was crop ground. If you're converting crop ground to pasture, there's some
rules and
some finer points that you'll have to look into. But yeah, if you just talk to your local NRCS office, they should be able to fill you in with that.
Yep,
and they'll do watering systems too.
Yeah, watering systems was a big problem for us besides fencing. With the cows, I was carrying 5-gallon buckets to them every day.
In the winter.
Which isn't fun, but you do what you have to do. And for the pigs, I was using 55-gallon barrels with nipple waters in it, which worked great until the pigs rip out the nipples, and then you have to figure something else out. So I've got those jerry-rigged. I've installed that new Mirafount water, which has been great. But hopefully they are able to help us with funding for a better watering system.
Mhm.
We do have one well on the farm already, and there's another one across on the other side of the property actually. So that's something that we're going to have to figure out, is if that well is working or not, and if it's a good well or not, so that they can kind of crunch some numbers and see, what costs might be, to see what funding might be available to us.
Yep.
So, how have you marketed your pork so far?
We've just been doing mostly family and friends.
Yep, just word of mouth, really. Some coworkers.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't even have a website. We don't have a Facebook page.
No. We might have to get into that the more pigs that we get. We haven't had enough quite yet that we run into, needing that sort of advertising yet.
Yeah.
But we did sell quite a few of those piglets from the 2 rounds of farrowing that we did. We sold those mostly by Craigslist. I also put some word out on the PFI email thread, and
very useful tool.
Yeah, I had people buy from there, which was really nice. And some local newspapers, the Farminar spokesman, I think. Yeah. As far as the pork goes, we'll see how that goes this coming season.
Yeah. So as far as feed goes for our hogs, we were using, bagged feed for a while.
It's not ideal. It's expensive.
It is expensive, but we were kind of in a pinch, and we just had to, we had to feed them. They needed something to eat. We have since been feeding them small grains, barley. We do give them some corn.
And we are mixing that now.
We are going to be mixing that. I ordered the protein and the mineral mix today, and it should be here by tomorrow. So we are going to be mixing our own feed, since we do grow our own grains and corn and beans and things like that.
I will say it is hard to find anything but ground corn and bean mix for pigs from our local mills and whatnot. Nobody really has that. And if we actually looked into doing some organic, just because we had some interest in people wanting organic pork, but we couldn't
find any
feed.
Unless we grew it our own. So
I mean, we could look farther than our 30-mile radius, but then it just gets expensive really fast. It does.
You have transportation costs, things like that. That we're not ready to tackle yet. So,
right.
But we do also have access to that, leftover produce from grocery stores, things like that,
which is really nice.
A lot of that is organic. We go through a lot of bananas.
They eat a lot of avocados.
They love those fatty vegetables like avocados and the sweet things. I love fruit. So that's something that we've really appreciated having access to as well.
Yeah.
Our pigs farrowed the first time
in June.
In June, yeah.
Which was really nice. Perfect time of the year.
Yep. We farrowed them out on pasture in hog huts, and they did just a phenomenal job. I think we only lost 4 or 5.
Yeah, out of 50.
50 piglets or so.
Yeah,
they did great. The second time we farrowed was November.
Late November, like really late November, last week.
Yeah, it was super cold then, and definitely not ideal for farrowing.
Right, unless you've got good.
Yep, unless you have the facilities to do so, to keep them warm. We were really worried about them laying on each other, things like that. And
we had some piglets kind of wander away, and our pens were maybe a little bit too big.
Yeah, they might have been too big, because we had some piglets wander away and they couldn't find the mamas again.
Away from the heat. Feed. What's your rations look like with pastures and grazing?
So right now we haven't gotten a chance to do a lot of pasturing. grazing them.
Right.
One,
Rotating.
because we are lacking in fencing, and two, because we don't have their noses rung yet, so, or didn't this last season. So when we did let them out on pasture, they were really hard on it. We couldn't get them moved fast enough. So we ended up feeding a lot of them out in the farrowing house area in that sacrifice pen. So this year, like we've mentioned, we're going to be trying a pig tractor and looking into more fencing so that we can graze them. And I'm not sure what our, ratio of.
I think we're gonna kind of play around with that a little bit, and maybe see how they do. And I'd like to kind of experiment and see how little feed we can kind of get away with. Kind of find that happy medium.
To where they're gaining and to where they're still happy and full and.
Right, and we definitely need them to gain well enough to get them off the farm by the fall, because one of our goals is to not overwinter them. But it all depends on how quickly you want to feed them out. Pigs can grow really fast, and they could still grow really fast on pasture if you're just gonna, feed them quite a bit.
And that depends on breed too. The breeds that we have are a little slower growing, but again, I think they have a better meat quality, fat quality.
Yeah. So we had red wattles is what we started with, and then we did get one Gloucestershire old spot sow, and she did really well too. But we noticed that the old spot piglets just had a better build. I don't know. Their bodies were a little bit thicker. They seemed to be a little
body composition.
Maybe a little meatier than the red wattles. And the red wattles were just
very sleek, skinny, maternal.
Not as meaty, I guess. But the meat was still really good from them. Don't get me wrong.
And they also had a very thick fat layer, and I think that I've been told and heard and read that a lot of those heritage breeds were bred for more of a fat production for lard rather than meat production. So that's something that we've also looked into, which is kind of why we like the old spot as well, because they seem to have maybe a little better ratio of meat to fat. I don't know if that's fair to say, but just in our experience. So to clarify, we sold our piglets. The first time we farrowed, we sold them
all in July.
As soon
as they were weaned. So we weaned them 1 month after they were born.
Yep. We kept them on mama's milk for as long as we could, because that was less input cost that we had to feed them. And then this last farrowing in November, we actually sold them right off of the mamas. We weaned them and sold them all at the same time. So we actually didn't feed them anything besides mama's milk. So, and that worked out really well.
And we sold some with the sows too, because we were selling the sows. So it was maybe a little bit easier to sell some of the piglets, because we could sell them.
We could sell them in a group. Yeah.
And we did a lot better selling them the second time around, because, we were on it a little sooner. I started advertising, well before they were born. Not knowing how many we'd have, but knowing that we were going to need to sell them. So that was a little more helpful.
Yeah. Let's see. What else is there? Any more questions? You can talk as long as you want.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I think we have a workaround. So I am going to be sharing Phil's presentation through my computer, and then Phil is going to talk to us through his phone. And Phil, can I just unmuted you on your phone? Can you hear me all right? Maybe?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That's if I unmute my phone.
All right, I am going to start sharing your presentation on my computer. And let's get this going. So Phil, you'll just have to tell me when to go to the next slide.
Okay.
All right, so can everybody see Phil's PowerPoint?
I can see it.
If you want to go ahead then, Phil, just tell me when to go to the next slide and I'll advance.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you so much,
first of all, thank you.
Andrew, and sorry for a little bit of a delay there. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for getting that all put together, and thank you to Marissa and Andrew for talking as long as you could until we got this fixed. I really appreciate it. So I'm not a techie, so this is not my thing, I guess here. But my name's Phil Kramer. This is kind of just going to go through a general setup of what I do as far as on my farm, and just some little tidbits as far as what I can think of as far as hog production goes. Just a picture of my gestation facility here, and I live just southwest of Hardy, Iowa, which most people don't know where that's at, but that's east of Humboldt, northeast of Humboldt, Iowa. And then I also have some work with my dad. His farm is up by Algona, Iowa. So you can go to the next slide there. So there's a picture. There's just kind of a background, my background in hog production. So I'm a 5th generation Iowa hog farmer. We've always raised my dad on the Kramer side of my family. We've had pigs for years. And then I picked up an animal science degree from Iowa State University, and I am currently a field agent for Niman Ranch. I've been with them for 16 years, and I cover Western Iowa and work directly with just farrow-to-finish farmers that raise pigs for Niman Ranch. Those two pictures there are aerial photos. The top photo is an aerial photo of my dad's farm. That's just southwest of Algona. And the bottom photo is an aerial photo of my farm. We purchased that acreage 4 years ago. And the house was nice, but everything was pretty run down. You can kind of see the barn and the one farrowing house there. They were pretty rough shape. So we put a lot of money and time into those. And then I built that gestation building that was there that you could see initially on the beginning of the PowerPoint. So if you want to go to the next one. This is just my family here. This is my wife, Erin. She owns and manages a mixed animal veterinary practice in Humboldt. And then there's my 3 kids right there. They're helping me vaccinate pigs that day. They do a good job of that. The oldest one is Henry, and then Sam and Carolyn. And they are a big part of our farm and help out a lot with the pigs. They really like working with the baby pigs. But my oldest boy is really good about helping me move sows around and that type of stuff and doing some chores. So family's a big part of our operation, and hopefully one of these 3 will be the 6th generation of Iowa hog farmer. Go to the next slide. So just a quick background on my farm operation. It's a Niman Ranch operation. We're certified through Niman Ranch. It's mostly bedded pens and hoop buildings. I have a 65 sow farrow-to-finish operation. We market roughly, this last year I marketed roughly 825 market hogs through Niman Ranch. My sow herd consists mostly of Chester White, Yorkshire, and Hereford cross sows. And then I typically breed those sows or those gilts that I retain back myself. I breed those either to Duroc meat quality based boars, or I do have some Hereford boars that I use for cleanup or heat detection. I do have a couple purebred Hereford sows, and that's a picture of Hereford pigs. Obviously, a picture of some of my Hereford pigs there that were born a few years ago. I had a lot larger herd of Herefords at one time. Actually, it was the largest registered Hereford herd in the United States. But just from a production standpoint, kind of got away from the purebreds and went more towards the 3-way cross on my south side, and then breeding those to a terminal Duroc. Go to the next slide. So our farm operation mainly can see my farm where I live is basically a breed to wean operation. You can see kind of where we were as far as that gestation facility we have that was open front. And then I farrow either, my gestation's like in a Cargill setup, and then I either farrow in freestyle farrowing pens or in the Smidley style huts that you see here. I've got 16 of those Smidley style huts. And then I have 24 freestyle farrowing pens that are in the barn and in the farrowing house on my site. Breed to wean at my site. So for my operation, for my place, the pigs get weaned at roughly 28 to 35 days of age. And then, and that's by Niman Ranch protocol. Sometimes I go a little bit later if I need to kind of adjust my breeding schedule. And then from there, all the pigs are, all the young pigs are taken up to my dad's farm. And then his operation is basically consists of older hog buildings, some barns that we used to farrow in that we switched to nurseries. And then he's got 4 hoop buildings that we use mainly for finishing. We can finish roughly 150 pigs per hoop building, and we have 4 hoop barns. So that's kind of the way it's broken down. Breed to wean at my site, and then wean to finish at my dad's site. Please go to the next slide, please. So just kind of some tools of the trade or things that I think are helpful when handling pigs, and Marissa and Andrew kind of hit on some of this stuff as far as moving pigs, handling pigs, and what's kind of needed if possible. So this all depends on the size and scale of your hog operation. So some of these are maybe more essential to other size operations than they are towards, a bigger operation is going to maybe need some more equipment, while our smaller one's probably going to need a little bit less equipment. But one thing I really like to have, and my dad didn't get until I graduated from high school and was in college, but a hydraulic hog cart to go behind like a tractor or a truck is really handy. You can load pigs and move pigs a lot easier when you load or move them from a ground level situation. That hydraulic hog cart there that you see, that goes, with the hydraulics, it'll go all the way down straight to the ground, and they can be lifted up and then move the pigs from there. And the pigs just seems like the pigs load a lot easier on something that's, on that, because it's just straight on the ground. Some of those hydraulic hog carts are what they call high lift ones, and you can actually lift those up as high as to be able to load like a semi trailer. So sorting panels, like Andrew and Marissa said, pigs are very intelligent, and sometimes it gets to be frustrating because they're very intelligent and there can be ornery at times. So having a sort panel is in order to move pigs is very handy. A syringe, just in case you do some type of vaccination program, or you need to do worm, or pigs get sick and occasionally need to be treated with antibiotics. So having a syringe available, buckets, wheelbarrow, that type of thing for handling feed and manure. And the larger you get, possibly you're going to need like a tractor or skid loader of some sort to handle the pigs by moving them around using the hog cart or deliver feed, that type of thing. You go to the next slide, please. So different types of production that there are, and depends on what type of land or infrastructure you have. The hog production comes in all sizes, and I'm going to go through all of them, and even up to, just kind of in touch on confinement type production. But all hog production comes in all sizes. However, you can have a nice hog setup no matter what size of operation you want. So this is a picture of a nice pasture operation. You can see this farmer is using A-frame huts, which I really like A-frame huts. I think they probably work the best of all the type of farrowing huts, just from the standpoint that they got like a angled side. They seem to stay cooler in the summer. So that's kind of the one I like. And you can keep, pigs in either with some woven wire or, like Andrew and Marissa said, they use a woven electric fence. They didn't like that as much, but I know a lot of guys in the Niman Ranch system that have used just 2 strands of electric fence and making sure obviously it's hot. But I know Paul Willis used to always talk about putting one strand at 6 inches off the ground, and then the second strand at 18 inches off the ground, and that's all he ever used out in his pasture production. So it can be done with just some electric fence. One thing that is nice about that is, with a pasture operation, you can run actually quite a few pigs on a little bit of area. If you do like a rotational pasture system, a lot of the guys that I've worked with through Niman Ranch, they'll run 10 sows with litters on 1 acre of ground. they'll rotate that rotate their hog pastures through with their regular crop rotation. So a lot of times they'll go corn, soybeans, oats, alfalfa, hay, and then pig pasture. And that's a nice way to keep the soil healthy and also keep the pigs healthy, because by doing a rotation like that, you reduce the chances of any worm buildup that can occur in the soil. And there is, I don't know if they still have it, but they did it for a while. Albert Lee Seed House had what they called a pig pasture mix as far as for seeding hog pastures. And I should have looked that up to see exactly what was in that, but I know it's a mix of cool season and late and warm season grasses, as well as different types of clover and alfalfa. That basically makes it so that there's always some type of vegetation throughout the growing season. So that's just kind of a shot of, looking at like a pasture operation. Obviously, with a pasture operation, you still, need some type of nutrition involved with that, as far as like the grind. Most of our Niman Ranch guys obviously use like a corn soy type of program for their nutrition system. But you want to go to the next slide, please? If you want to do just a simple feeder to finish type operation, a lot of guys, that's kind of what works better for people. They just don't have the time or the infrastructure for like a farrow-to-finish operation, which does, like Andrew and Marissa said, it takes a lot of time and takes a lot of facilities if you really want to do it well, and you want to be able to do it year-round. So there's a lot of different ways you can make that work, but even in this system here, just a simple open front barn building with a concrete pad. Obviously, there's access to feed and water there, either through self-feeders or in automatic waters, but there's a number of different niche markets that are looking for guys to finish pigs, either get in pigs that are 20 pounds and take them up to market, or get pigs in that are 50 pounds and take them up to market. And a lot of those vary just based off of either it's a custom finish type of situation, or it can even be where you get paid so much per pig space, or it can even be a type of situation where you purchase the pigs and have a contract to sell the pigs back to whatever that niche market is. So the big things you need, if you just want to do like a wean to finish or feeder to finish system, obviously, like I said, it's some type of good building for different type of weather situations, some type of water, either tank water, automatic water, feeders, access to bedding, and then feed that can either be made either on the farm if you have access to corn and can purchase soybean meal and have a grinder mixer set up, or you can purchase feed through your local feed mill or local co-op, depending on what type of operation you want to do. Land and infrastructure, just if you want to go a little bit more advanced as far as within the Niman Ranch system, that top picture there is a picture of the inside of my farrowing house. That's the south side of my barn. I have 2 rooms in my barn that are just like that. So those are laggy 5x7 freestyle farrowing pens. The sows kind of come and go as they want. There's a 2x12 in the doorway of each pen to keep the pigs in for about 7 to 10 days. And then the sows go out to a lean-to where I feed them. This building is completely insulated, mechanical ventilation. I have 2 12-inch ventilation fans that are 18-inch ventilation fans that are on a timer and thermostatic controller. So you can get, if you want to put a little bit more infrastructure into it, you can do that in order to be able to farrow year-round. And then some type of finished bedded system like a hoop building, like I show there at the bottom. So a lot of bedded facilities, and you can meet a lot of niche market protocols if you have something that's kind of set up like this. Next one, please. And then there's always, and I know probably kind of something that a lot of guys maybe don't want to talk about, but there's also confinement type custom finishing situations where you put up a barn and then get paid custom finish for them. Or if you wanted to do a complete confinement farrow to finish operation, that's also an option too. Take a lot more infrastructure, a lot more kind of cost production just from the cost of the facilities. But there's also a lot of bigger diversified row crop operations want to, try to utilize the manure from confinement operations. So it is an option, and I just want to make sure that it gets expressed. Next one. So genetics, that's a big thing, when you're raising pigs, and I really like talking about genetics, and it's kind of neat seeing the pictures of Andrew and Marissa's red wattle pigs, and they even mentioned the Gloucester old spot there, which I do have a picture of that, as you can see here in the bottom of this is a slide here. But when you're selecting genetics, there's a lot of big things to look at. Not every type of breed works in every system, and not even every line within that breed works within every system. There are multiple lines of Duroc within the Duroc breed. Some are really good for meat quality standpoint, and some are more towards the show pig end of things. So there's multiple things there. But so basically, what is your end goal with raising pigs, and what type of genetics you want to use? And like Marissa and Andrew said, they're doing direct marketing, which is a really good deal. I do some of that myself. And meat quality is key in that type of system. People want something that tastes like pork. You have good color, have good marbling, and people want to come back and purchase more of that. So what's your end goal as far as what your product? Are you going to sell to a niche market? What are you going to do there? How are your pigs going to be raised? You know, as far as what type of facilities you have, are you going to be in a pasture type operation? Are you going to be in a more deep bedded operation? Are you going to go antibiotic free? Are you going to try to go vaccination free? What are you going to do for feed? Are you going to have, a typical corn soy type program? Or are you going to do more like a pasture-based operation like Marissa and Andrew have? And selecting genetics behind that, it makes a huge difference, because a pig that, is bred for, a more deep-bedded or confinement type system is not going to work as well on a pasture operation, and vice versa. And it looks like Marissa and Andrew were able to find a really good line of pigs that they like that works well in their pasture operation. Herd health is a big thing. Making sure you try to get, purchase breeding stock from a guy who's got good herd health. Sometimes you can find some deals on Craigslist, and sometimes those deals on Craigslist aren't actually deals because you're buying a problem that somebody else had. But so good herd health is helpful. And then selection, making sure you're selecting. If you're going to keep your own gilts back, selecting for the ones that do the best. It sounds like Marissa and Andrew had a really good set of sows there with what their pasture farrowing numbers, sounded like. So making sure you are selecting for pigs that are going to work best in your system. And then also, if you're going to do a farrow-to-finish or any type of farrow-to-wean system, are you going to go natural service with a boar, or are you going to go with artificial insemination? And there's positives both ways. And there's negatives both ways, but positive with a natural service situation is that the boar does most of the work, and hopefully he's getting things bred, and you get a lot of pigs on the ground, and you can purchase that boar from a reputable breeder. With artificial insemination, you can with an artificial insemination, you can usually get some of the high-end genetics as far as even meat quality and growth go, and get that all in a tube of semen and AI as many sows as you want, via just from one very high-end boar. But that's maybe a little bit more down the road as far as production goes. So I know I switched to artificial insemination because I was having problem finding really good boars, that bred well, and it's been really helpful on my operation so far. So herd health is a big thing. And one thing that comes into play, especially is the more we hear about African swine fever and different things like that, biosecurity is a huge part of herd health. And on top of that, buying from a high herd health breeding stock operation, like I mentioned initially. But biosecurity is a big thing. If you're going to have people come to your farm, try to find out where they've been. If they've been to other hog farms, when were they at other hog farms? If you're going to take pigs to the sale barn or take them to the locker even, make sure you're wearing at least 1 or 2 pair of plastic boots so that you're not dragging any potential disease issues back to your farm. So biosecurity is a huge thing. Try not to have too many just random visitors come to your place if possible. I know it's hard to do when we all have our own farms and we have guests and family come, but just trying to know where everybody's been before. What are you going to do if you have pigs get sick? Are you going to use some type of alternative remedies? Essential oils, probiotics, prebiotics. There's a lot of really good products out there that are in the probiotic area. I know we use oregano in our feed program to help with some internal gut issues. There's a couple different farmers that I work with through Niman Ranch that use some essential oils for different things and have really good luck with them. So that's one thing for good herd health. The other thing is parasite control. Are you going to try to do natural parasite control? Because over time, especially in pasture operations, especially if you don't rotate pastures, you can have issues with worm buildup or external parasites. So are you going to use diatomaceous earth, pumpkin seed, that type of thing for natural remedies, or are you going to go more of a pharmaceutical roundabout way, pharmaceutical way, where maybe you inject with Ivermectin, inject with Dectomax, or you safeguard in the feed. So just kind of decide which way you want to go with your operation before you go that way, and make sure that you have a plan in place in order to make sure you control different disease issues. Another thing that in my operation is important, we have a lot of CAFOs around our place, a lot of hog confinements around our operation, and from a lot of different companies. So a good vaccination program for our operation is pretty key. That goes all the way to a pre-breeding shot, for lepto and parvo, a pre-farrowing shot to our sows and gilts for Clostridium and E. coli, and then a large, a fair amount of vaccines for our younger pigs, ranging from an E. coli vaccine to circovirus vaccine, PRRS vaccine, all the way up to erysipelas. So having a good vaccination program in place can be very important. A lot of smaller operations maybe can get by without having a huge vaccination program, but as you grow in size, vaccinations are going to become more important. So marketing opportunities is always a big part. So what is your goal? There's a number of different companies out there that are great companies to work with. You're going to direct market, and Marissa and Andrew talked about that, and that's a really good option. I direct market probably 15 or 20 pigs a year on top of what I sell to Niman Ranch. So that's always been a great extra cash flow for me. Organic production, Organic Valley, and I've had some, I have some friends that are in the Organic Valley program, and again, that's a really good option if you're not into direct marketing and you just want to raise pigs and have somebody do the marketing for you. Companies like Organic Valley, antibiotic-free, humanely raised companies like Niman Ranch, or even breed-specific companies like Birkwood are good companies to work with that do the marketing for you, and you just have to kind of just raise pigs, basically. So other options are, your Tysons, your Smithfields, those type of programs if you want to go a conventional route. Right now, that market is awful, to say the least, and I don't know when it's going to turn around. So it's an option, and there's a lot of guys that still do that, but it's not a real beneficial option, I guess, at this time. And then Iowa Select or some type of conventional market where you custom feed. It's also an option out there too. So next slide. Just a simple cash flow, and I don't know how well that spreadsheet comes up there. This was on a 20 sow farrow-to-finish operation, just kind of putting some numbers out there with pasture production. Marketing roughly 268 pigs a year, figuring in some death loss in that. 11 cents per pound for feed costs. That's a corn, soy, general mixed program. And then our marketing price through Niman Ranch, if you're a seasonal guy, is about $82 per hundredweight carcass price. You can get higher if you sell pigs year round. If you get more of a year round production, you can get things a little bit higher priced than that. I think I'm getting, right now I'm getting paid $92 a hundredweight, but I sell pigs to Niman Ranch basically every month of the year. So kind of depends on what type of operation you have there. And then that's approximately, a $23 per pig return overall cost. So not quite as good as a direct market operation, but maybe not as much work as far as having to do the direct marketing end of thing. So, and next slide, I think that's it. Yeah, if you got any questions, comments, I'd be more than happy to answer them right now.
So does anyone have any questions for Phil? You can go ahead and pop those into the chat box. We've got just a couple minutes left before we wrap things up for the night. And thanks again, Phil, for getting
no
through
problem.
that.
Thanks for
Figured
you
something
did
out.
most of the work. You did most of the work. I just answered your text messages and tried to figure things out for you, or help you figure out how to get me on here. So I appreciate your time and effort. Yeah.
Yeah, sure thing. Any questions from our participants we've got online? Here we go. So we've got one question. What's a recommended number of sows to get your feet wet when you're trying things out?
You know, that's a really good question, and I bet I could probably come up with 20 different answers if I tried. But you know, I would say somewhere in that 5 to 10 sow range is what I would try to start with, depending what you have for facilities. And the reason I say that is the biggest things that are going to come into play. You know, if you're going to purchase feed, you know, being able to get bulk feed makes a difference as far as cost of it. So that's one thing. If you're going to do some vaccinations, or you know, depending on how you're going to manage them, that's another. You know, you can throw away a lot of vaccine if you just by not having enough pigs to, you know, they only make it in, you know, 50 dose bottles a lot of times. So just having, you know, 5 to 10 sows, you're going to have roughly 50 to 100 pigs from that, you know, from 5 to 10 sows if you them all at one time. So that's, you know, probably a good way to start. The biggest thing is, are you going to direct market them, or are you going to go with a niche market? How are you going to market those pigs and be able to sell them? So it's, there's a lot there, but I think it's a good way to start, you know, if at that size, without having a ton of money, invested, and still be able to hopefully recoup things and still, you know, be able to manage things pretty easily.
All right, so we've got another question. What's your vaccination regime like? Are you solely natural based, or do you use pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, so in the Niman Ranch system, we're an antibiotic-free program and an all-vegetarian fed program. So I do use antibiotics if needed, but then those pigs are ear tagged or separated depending on the severity of the situation. That treatment is recorded, and then I sell those pigs. Those are actually usually the pigs I direct market. I mean, I let people know that, hey, these pigs have had an antibiotic at some point in time. But then, so I do treat pigs if they get sick. My vaccination regimen, which is allowed through Niman Ranch, and actually is, you know, we kind of recommend. We do have a pretty in-depth vaccination program, but I can kind of go through that real quick. It's probably going to sound pretty in-depth, and it maybe is compared to some other programs. But my sows and gilts and boars all get with a product called Farrow-to-finish Gold. That's for lepto, parvo, and erysipelas. My sows and gilts prior to farrowing, a couple of weeks prior to farrowing, I'll get a litter guard LTC, which is for E. coli and Clostridiums. And then my young pigs at birth, or 3 to 5 days after birth, they get an iron shot. I do a strep vaccine that I just started, and that's when I castrate and do that into things. And then at 10 days of age, I vaccinate for circovirus and mycoplasma pneumonia. That's in one vaccine. I do an oral E. coli vaccine, an oral salmonella vaccine, and a injected ileitis vaccine. And then at 3 weeks of age, I booster the strep vaccine. A week after I wean pigs, we booster the circovirus and mycoplasma pneumonia vaccine, and then we give a PRRS vaccine. We booster the E. coli vaccine, and I run an erysipelas vaccine as well through the water. So it's a pretty in-depth program. We are in a very hog-dense area. When my dad finished his pigs at that Cascade County, that ranks 8th in the nation in total hog production. So, and with Niman Ranch, I can't use antibiotics, or I can, if I do use antibiotics, I have to take those pigs out of the market and sell them elsewhere. So I try to cover my bases as much as possible, basically taking a shotgun approach to trying to keep herd health up. And I can give somebody, I have a written document of my vaccination program if somebody, if somebody would want that.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Phil, you could send that to me, and then when I send a thank you email out to everyone, I could just attach it to that and make it available for anyone.
Yep, no problem. I can do that.
Okay,
I see to finish pigs out on pasture. Do they use nose rings? Do you see a benefit to rings? We do not allow nose rings. This is just the Niman Ranch protocol. We do not allow nose rings in market pigs. We do allow sows that have access to pasture to be nose ring, and we only allow one type of nose ring, and that's the humane ring or the septum ring. And so, but the young pigs, for guys that finish pigs on pasture in the Niman Ranch system, we do not allow a nose ring, and that has to go. A lot of our protocol has to do with some of our customers and our customers' requests. So we do not allow nose rings in market hogs. In my opinion, depending on your soil type, the nose rings can be very beneficial. Where I'm at up here in north central, northwest Iowa, heavy, dark, black soil, pretty flat. If you don't nose ring and it's wet, you're not gonna have a pasture. You're gonna have a black dirt lot, for the most part. If you do have a kind of lighter soil, sandier soil, or even like a hard, rockier soil, most of the time you can kind of get by without a nose ring. In most cases, but I do know a lot of guys that in our system that don't nose ring, and boy, they don't have much for pasture by the end of the year. And the guys that do nose ring, it seems like they can maintain their pasture a little bit better throughout the year, which helps with erosion, that type of thing. A lot of guys will say that certain breeds are selected more for grazing than others. I know I had people when I sold purebred Hereford breeding stock, people asked me how well they would graze. I don't pasture farrows, so I don't know, but I know a lot of guys who bought pigs from me said they worked really well out on pasture. I know red wattles, like Andrew and Marissa mentioned, they seem to do really well on pasture. So certain breeds probably are more suitable for pasture than others, but if it gets wet and you have some heavy soil, it's probably going to be black before too long. Do you feel there's still growth in niche markets, or is it a supply catching up with demand? Every year when I first started with Niman Ranch 16 years ago, I thought, man, sooner or later this is going to catch up and we're going to be stagnant. But every year that I've been with the company, we've had some type of growth, and we continue to have growth. And right now we have a supply issue. I mean, we have more demand than we have pigs right now. And we've kind of, certain times of year we're a little bit more, we have a little bit more supply than what we need, but we're able to work through that without any major issues. But I would say February, March, June, July, August, September, if you have pigs going to market in those time frames, not only in Niman Ranch, but basically, in a lot of the niche markets. So those are pigs that are farrowed during the winter and the heat of the summer when a lot of people aren't really set up to do that. So if you have pigs going to market at those times of year, I don't think you have any problem selling pigs in the niche industry. I think it's still growing. Unfortunately, some of the bigger players, your Tyson, those type of guys are getting into the game. Your New Fashion Pork, those type of guys are getting into the niche market game. That concerns me a little bit because they can obviously do mass quantities, even more than what we are able to do with with our 600 some Niman Ranch farmers that we have. So that worries me a little bit. But at this point, from what I've seen over my 16 plus years with Niman Ranch in the niche industry, supply, there still seems like there's a huge demand and supply hasn't caught up with it yet. The pigs are not a sole source of my income. I work for Niman Ranch as a field agent, so that's my major source of income. My wife has her veterinary clinic. So the pigs at this point are not. I would like it to be my part of the income. Unfortunately, the way kind of things are in the world, I'm the one who supplies the health insurance for our family, and so I continue to work at Niman Ranch, which I enjoy doing. I enjoy working with farmers and helping guys improve all the time. But my long-term goal would be to be a full-time hog farmer or full-time farming in general. But it is not my sole income.